Okay. Hi, Magnus. Thank you very much for finding time for this interview at the occasion of presentation of your new book, Give, The Art of Living Generously. And I would like to start with the fact that after your first book was really a bestseller, and at that time the charity fed about 1 million children. Now we are at the stage that Mary's Meals is feeding about almost 2 million children. And you shared with the public the way you see the art of living in a generous way and giving at the same time. So what were the key things that you wanted to share with the public?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm just so excited that Give's being published in Croatia, because I think a lot of the things I've learned about charity and how we might practice charity in our lives, I learned in Croatia at the beginning of this work. So it makes me very happy indeed that the book's being published there. And I suppose really that's why I wanted to write the book most of all, Željka. I just feel, in one sense, I've lived a very privileged life in that I've over and over again encountered amazing people, people who live lives of charity in many different parts of the world, in many different settings and situations and different cultures. People who have really learned to give of themselves in a very particular way. And I've noticed certain things over the years, like, for example, I've noticed that very often the people who have really learned to give are also the people who are most joyful very often. They're the people who seem to have become most fully human, the people that God made them to be. And so I've always been really interested in that, you know, and what is it that resides in the human heart that makes people want to give, even to strangers in faraway countries? Well, what is it that makes people want to give, even maybe when they're suffering themselves, or it might look like they have nothing to give, and yet they find a way to do so. So that really fascinates me. Also, in terms of faith, you know, I write in the book at one point that I feel like when we see authentic charity, the most beautiful charity, we see God, you know, and I think that more and more, those of us who call ourselves Christian, we must be seen to be people who practice charity in a particular way. You know, I know that's what people said about the earliest church. You know, look at those Christians, see how they love one another. You know, and I would wish that that's what people say when they look at us Christians today. So all those things I feel like I've had a privilege of experiencing in many ways, and the whole story of Mary's Meals that's so tied to Croatia from the beginning, really you could say is a story that has been fueled by human goodness, by startling acts of charity, by lots and lots of little acts of love, as we like to call them. That's been our story, you know, and yet at the same time, during that period, when you look out beyond Mary's Meals, I think sometimes there's quite a lot of confusion about charity. Sometimes even charitable organizations set up to steward and organize charity have even been the cause of scandal. You know, I think in some parts of the world there's a breakdown in trust between the public and charitable organizations, and that's one of the other main reasons why I wanted to write this book, because I think that's such a terrible thing if those of us who are responsible for organizing charity actually end up giving charity a bad name, or we actually put people off supporting charity, when actually it's perhaps the most important thing that we could ever do. So, you know, I never planned to do this with my life and find myself being responsible in a particular way for this work. And many of us are in Mary's Meals. And I think we recognize it's no small responsibility to enable other people, to enable their acts of kindness, their generosity to be effective. You know, so we need to do that in a way that encourages charity, that portrays it for what it is, this most beautiful thing, this thing that is intrinsic to what human beings are, this desire to love, you know, and I suppose that's what I explore quite a lot in the book, around how do we do this then as the work grows in a way that still keeps it as a work of love primarily, that still really respects every person who gives, every person that receives in our mission. So yeah, lots of different elements to this, Željke.
And you also said that, to go back to this, what you mentioned about charities, you said we are not charity itself. Organizations do not perform acts of charity. Individual human beings do. So in a way, this is, in one sentence, this is what you shared with us now, that individual human beings are responsible for this work of charity. And organizations should only steward this in a proper way.
Yeah, exactly, Željke. And I think that's the mistake sometimes we can make in charities, that we think we are, those of us who lead it, we are the prime movers. You know, in Mary's Meals, I have this very deep sense that we are serving something much bigger than us. We are enabling, we're facilitating, we're making effective, you know, but we're not charity itself, you know. And you know, I just see that today abundantly when I look at what's happening with Mary's Meals in Croatia. You know, I think you're feeding over 56,000 children every day from the support in Croatia. You know, I think back to those days in early days in Slavonski Brod, you know, and encountering you and your family and others doing amazing work there, and learning about that, about you know, about our role in that, and learning especially about how do we avoid becoming, you know, I think there's a risk sometimes, isn't there, when we're doing this kind of work, that we start to think of ourselves as the givers, you know, and people over there, they're just passive receivers, you know, and then we start to think somehow that makes us superior, you know, and I think that can happen, especially in large organizations, that we can, this big divide appears between those who are serving, you know, and those who are organizing things. And I think it's so important that we find ways to keep that connected, you know, that we don't start to wrongly think that we are saviors of some sort, but rather we're just servants of this goodness, and servants of divine providence too. What you know, recognizing deeply that what God has given us, everything that He's given us, is for sharing, is to help this world to become better somehow.
And but in a way, the rule that you have set up very early at founding organization, about 7% of cost, so that the 7% of money that is fundraised can be then used for costs of organization itself, is a strong protection and reminder for all people working for Mary's Meals that the money that is being collected, it should go to receivers, to children that we want to feed.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's a good example. And I think that's been a very important decision for us over the years. And I know that many people choose to support our work because they can see that clearly, you know, is a rule. So I think it's important. And yet at the same time, I think it's not enough just the numbers. The numbers are important because they make it real, and we can then prove what we are doing and measure it. But it can't also just be about ticking a box saying, well, we kept below the 7% and therefore everything's okay. We also have to somehow make sure it is really a work of love, and that attitude to treasuring every gift that someone gives us. You know, I remember in the early days when people used to give us gifts in Scotland, and we would put them in the truck and then we would drive them to Croatia or to Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I remember that sense of, I need to look after these gifts. I know the person that gave those to me in Scotland. I need to ensure everyone gets to the person it was intended for at the other end. And you know, now our work's growing and it's evolved in different ways, but that same attitude has to stay there, that we really treasure and respect every gift that we're entrusted with.
But this, I think that people who donate to Mary's Meals recognize this. And I'm so glad that you explained the way you see it also in your new book. But we could see this now in the time of Corona crisis, that the donations and gifts of people and support for Mary's Meals continued to grow.
Yeah, it's been an incredible thing, hasn't it? You know, at the beginning of this pandemic, you know, I think we were thinking, how possibly can funding hold up? How can people keep supporting us? And our experience has been the opposite. You know, our work is growing more than ever, you know, and just that thing we talked about earlier about human goodness, it's so abundant, isn't it, in the world? You know, even in this crisis, people want to share. People aren't forgetting those who are in the greatest need in the world, those children who don't even have enough to eat. People aren't forgetting them, and the promise that we've made to those children. It's a very beautiful thing.
Yes. Okay, Magnus, thank you very much for this occasion, for sharing with us your thoughts, and we are looking forward. I'm looking forward to all new things that are ahead of us for feeding more children and for becoming full of joy because we are doing it.
No, thank you, Željke. And I just want to thank the people of Croatia for all they do for Mary's Meals and for teaching me so much. I wouldn't have been able to write this book if it wasn't for my friends in Croatia. So thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.